Bitcoin is the property of preference to institutions. There is at least $1 trillion worth of new demand if we can solve the sustainability issues. What's up, everyone? It's George from CryptoPotato, and no, these are not my words. It was Shark Tank's Kevin OLeary who said it in the interview you're just about to watch. Did you know that 6 out of 10 of Mr. Wonderful's most recent investments were in crypto? Today, Kevin tells us how he diversifies his crypto portfolio, what's preventing institutions from coming in, and above all, what changed his mind on Bitcoin. OLeary is also the newest shareholder of the leading cryptocurrency exchange, FTX. He's also invested in Wonderful, a platform that's all about making DeFi more accessible. We're also joined by Ben Samaroo, the founder of Wonderful, who talks about the future of DeFi. Will DeFi ever replace traditional finance? Stay tuned to find out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss on any new videos coming up every week. Okay, there we go. Well, first of all, hello to both of you, and thanks so much for agreeing to do this. And
thank you.
And let's just dive right into it. I have a few questions for Kevin, and then I have a few questions for Ben. Kevin, first of all, I would like to ask you, back in the days, you were rather skeptical of Bitcoin and crypto in general, but we can see that this has changed quite a bit recently. Can you tell us what changed your mind on the industry and on Bitcoin in general?
You know, when facts change, I change. I'm an investor. I'm a pragmatic investor. I allocate capital across a wide range of asset classes. What kept me out of crypto, although I did own some personally in 2017, some Ethereum and some Bitcoin, was the regulatory environment. You got to remember, in the early days, the first advocates were going against what regulators were talking about. And I'm a heavily regulated investor. I've got so many investments in financial services companies that I cannot afford to be offside compliance. And then all of a sudden in the last, I'd call it 18 months, we've started to see regulators in Switzerland and Germany and France and England, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, where the first ETFs emerged with Ethereum and Bitcoin. And all of a sudden I felt it was now available to me as an investor on a compliant basis. And so, not only to invest in the actual cryptocurrencies and tokens, but to actually become an investor in the sector and start supporting entrepreneurs like Ben and others, because I see this as a very large growth segment. I mean, cryptocurrencies are here to stay. Institutions have not yet really embraced it, but they're going to be. We've seen a lot of hedge funds, high net worth individuals, family offices, but in the years ahead, the biggest investment opportunities are going to be democratization of investing, particularly around cryptocurrencies, and finding ways to make decentralized finance easy to use, because right now it isn't. And of course, building compliant platforms. I mean, I have to be compliant. And so I'm very excited about it. And I would say 6 out of 10 of my most recent investments in the last 18 months have all gone into this sector: digital currencies, tokens, new platforms. It's a big space for me now.
Right. So speaking about compliance, you recently teamed up with FTX. Is this part of the reason why? And can you tell us a little bit more about this partnership? You're now a shareholder there.
Yes, I am. That relationship started at Bitcoin 2021. I'm really transparent about this. I can't do things that aren't compliant. And when I first met up with Sam and his team, I said, guys, the reason institutions are not playing ball in cryptocurrencies is not volatility. That's not the issue.
Right.
They want to play, but there's no compliant platform that could actually work with my compliance infrastructure. Because, it's one thing to put a small amount of money to work, but when you start talking about a 10% allocation of a large pool of capital, you need to integrate that with your compliance systems and your accounting systems and your external reporting systems. And, Sam and his team over at FTX assured me that they had the infrastructure. So I said, great, work with my people, prove it. And over a 3 or 4 month period, they did. And I became an investor, and I'm allocating some of my my capital onto that platform. And so, yes, but it's because of compliance that they were,
Right.
they have the infrastructure, they've invested, and that's how it happened. And I'm happy to be supportive, just as I am with Ben, because he understands the challenges of compliance. I've been talking to both those partners about compliance since day one.
Right.
We're not going anywhere if we're not compliant, and they get it. They get it.
Right. And another thing that you talk about a lot is portfolio diversification. Now, we all know that your traditional portfolio is very diverse, but do you also approach crypto with that mindset? And specifically, for example, a lot of people are seeing Bitcoin as sort of a digital gold, like store of value. Do you approach the industry from an investment perspective in the same way? Do you diversify your crypto investments like you do your traditional investments?
Same way. So, if you looked at in the early days, I was primarily Bitcoin. Then I got into Ethereum, then USDC, and then there's at least 18 other tokens and coins that I'm looking at now. And also on the platforms. I mean, diversification. I'm an investor in WonderFi. I'm an investor in FTX. I mean, these platforms are where the puck is going in financial services. That's the way I look at it. It's sort of, I want to be where institutions are going to be focused in 2 years. And I think these are the kind of platforms. And certainly I'm a consumer, if you look at my investments in consumer goods and services, I look at FTX as a compliant institutional platform. I look at WonderFi as a huge opportunity to provide a service for millions and millions of investors on an individual basis. And that's really why I'm in both of them. But every day, you got to understand something. I get my head squeezed by my own compliance department every single day, not sometimes, every day. They watch me like a hawk, and so they should. And I have to report to external regulators. Right. So I'm a good test case in what it's going to take to get institutions to play ball in cryptocurrencies.
Okay, and what about the ESG discussion that's going on ever since Elon Musk brought it up a few months back, which actually set the market way into the red. But after that, during the B Word event with Katie Wood and Jack Dorsey, he was a lot more positive on Bitcoin, which also kind of staged this recovery that we're seeing right now. Do you think institutions are starting to come back? Because we saw them being a little bit more on the fence and on the sides immediately after Musk brought up ESG concerns before the big.
Yeah, I mean, look, this has been an issue now for 6 months. I'll tell you the way institutions are thinking about it. They're not on board yet. They're not there yet because they have compliance and ethics committees and ESG committees. But where it's starting to look interesting is a lot of these projects around, China's shutting down miners, and there's a lot of interest in West Texas. And because you can be sustainable there through wind and solar, what I think is going to happen is there'll probably be more capital flowing into these facilities that can provide mining services that mine sustainable coins. And then what will happen is they'll simply invest in those miners. For example, I'm an investor in Hut 8. Jamie Leverton, she mines sustainably. I can own her stock and play the volatility of Bitcoin because she has all her coin on her balance sheet. And I think I'm up 68% on that position since I took it, because I'm struggling. How do I hold Bitcoin sustainably? I have to know with certainty that she's mining sustainably, and she assured me she was. And so I'm a shareholder there. It's been a good recovery because Bitcoin itself has recovered back, from its lows. But going forward, when I look at new capital in mining, I will only invest in sustainable miners. I have to. I don't have a choice. I mean, it's not like this is a personal decision. I have to be compliant with the institutions I service.
Right. And speaking about Bitcoin, do you think there is a future where any other cryptocurrency, for example, Ether overtakes Bitcoin in terms of market dominance and market capitalization?
No, no, I don't. I
I
don't
like
see
to
that
hear.
happening. Bitcoin is the property of preference for institutions. There's at least $1 trillion worth of demand out there. If we could solve the sustainability issues and the ethics issues for around where it's mined, no. Most of us who invest in Bitcoin buy it as a property, not a currency. And we own it. I have no plan on selling any of mine. And no, there is nothing like Bitcoin.
Right. Okay, Ben, DeFi has been booming over the past few years. We can see that by a number of metrics such as the total value locked, the number of active addresses on different blockchains such as Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, and whatnot. Do you think that DeFi is where crypto is going to? Do you think this is the future of crypto? And also, do you think that this is the future of finance, as many put it?
Yeah, I think DeFi really has the potential to democratize and transform finance. So I would say it's more the future of finance. I think as Kevin said, Bitcoin, it's the property of choice for institutions. It really is that established store of value, digital gold, as a lot of people call it. And I think there are a lot of other applications within crypto, but for DeFi, I really see it as the future of finance. And I think we just see that because you have all these issues in the traditional financial system. Some of them we see in North America, a lot of them we see a lot more globally, whether it's censorship or high transaction fees, the huge amount of people that are unbanked across the world. And then when you get into countries where you have corrupt governments and high inflation rates, and really you just have your average person that doesn't have access to a safe place to deposit their assets or to borrow money or to invest, it's that really shows the potential of what DeFi has to offer. So I think you talked about the growth of the market cap recently, and that's definitely significant. But I think our view really is that we're still really just in the very, very early stages. Like this is probably Bitcoin in 2014 or 2015 equivalent, something like that. But I think there's real traction and value in the space. I think we've seen the use cases are real. You can send money globally, earn interest on your assets, lend and borrow, all in a decentralized way. So I think DeFi really has the potential to disrupt finance, which is the biggest industry in the world. So I think there could be trillions of dollars of value here, and it all comes down to DeFi presenting a cheaper, faster, and just an easier way to do finance.
Right. And can you tell us a little bit more about WonderFi and what you guys are building?
Yeah, so with WonderFi, we're really centered on what we see as the biggest problem in DeFi, which is around accessibility. So just like any early technology, you have a lot of the applications that are really tailored towards experienced users or these early adopters. Right. And so for DeFi, that's, crypto experts and, traders like yourself who have been in the space for a long time, have a lot of knowledge and background expertise. But the big problem there is everybody in the industry within DeFi and within crypto is seeing all this activity and, seeing the growth, but it is really within this small pocket, and that goes against the core principles of DeFi, which is that it should be accessible to everyone. So our mission with WonderFi really is to bring decentralized finance to the masses and take what is a very fragmented and complicated ecosystem where there's a really steep learning curve and a need for all these kind of deep explanations and guides for people to just be able to take that first step and make it far more simple for somebody to come in and access the key parts of DeFi that your average Joe or Jane is going to care about. And so that's really what our core focus is at WonderFi. And we've been fortunate enough to partner with people like Kevin and Josh Richards and others who are really helping us to reach a broader audience and then really bring in that trust factor, which is a key component of bringing more users into the space, as you know.
Right. So actually, one of the questions I wanted to ask you in the spirit of Mr. Wonderful's Shark Tank, performance is what is the biggest issue of DeFi, because when you're building something, you should always try to pinpoint the issue you're trying to solve, but you pretty much answered it. So I was going to ask you about security, because yesterday we saw what was arguably one of the biggest exploits in the industry. Poly network got exploited and over $600 million was compromised. What is your view on that? How do we solve the security issues with new protocols which are coming up every single day? And how do we put trust in a field which is so young and so challenging right now?
Yeah, so to me, it really requires collaboration between regulators and industry. Our view really is that DeFi will not be this unregulated space forever. It's just like crypto. Myself and our co-founding team have been in the space since 2016, and we saw the same sort of messaging where there's the kind of core community that believes that there should be no regulation, and then kind of the rest of the world that realizes there's going to be something that comes, whether it's a middle ground with what traditional financial regulation looks like, or something that is more akin to traditional regulation. And so I think with DeFi, like, really expect the same, and effective regulation really takes time. I think we've seen in some jurisdictions there's more of a knee-jerk reaction, and I think that really stifles innovation and progress. But this collaboration between industry and regulators allows regulators to get more up to speed on what the opportunities and what the risks are of DeFi, and really how it differs from crypto and from traditional crypto, and then from your normal financial products. So I think it still remains to be seen to what extent regulators will get involved in DeFi, but what I anticipate is that regulation is going to really center around audit and testing of smart contracts, which would arguably prevent issues like the one that you referenced yesterday. And I think the justification for that makes a lot of sense, because you have these smart contracts that are carrying out all this core functionality that within the traditional world you would have individuals in a regulated environment doing. Right. So you'll see that shift to more reliance and understanding of the technology. And then I think the other part on regulation is there's this huge need for regulators to speak to each other and for collaboration. As you know, crypto and DeFi, in a lot of cases, they're both borderless, and so there's a lot of jurisdictional issues. And for people looking to build in the space like us, it creates a lot of challenges to be able to grow and scale a product globally. And so we've seen some good progress there. GFIN, which is I think it was created a couple of years ago, but it's a collaboration of a bunch of regulators from across the world and a lot of major jurisdictions. And still remains to be seen how effective that is, but really the goal and the underlying philosophy is there, which is to help to create that communication and create an easier way for businesses to kind of navigate these regulations around the world, rather than going and having to deal with each regulator individually. So I think as that unfolds, we'll see a lot more kind of progress for platforms like ours.
Right. And Kevin, if I asked you the same question about the biggest issue in DeFi right now, what would you say the biggest issue is with this industry?
The regulatory environment. Obviously, it's rapidly changing. We nearly saw some policy come through the infrastructure bill, and the last minute it was changed.
Right.
We've heard from the SEC, other regulators globally also talking about this. So, early adopters are willing to take regulatory risk because they're doing it on a personal basis, but that's not true for institutions. And so, you have to look at it two ways. One way you look at it, you say, okay, we're nowhere yet on a uniform regulation. For example, we still don't have an ETF with Bitcoin in the United States, yet you can find it in Canada. How is that?
Right.
And that's because the regulator there has been, perhaps more advanced or more flexible, and the same in other places on Earth. On the other hand, I estimate that just for Bitcoin, there's $1 trillion worth of demand waiting to come in from institutions that might allocate 1 to 3% into it as an asset. So if you're a Bitcoin holder, you're willing to wait until the regulatory environment is accommodative to let the rest of the institutional capital come in. So I'm extremely constructive on investing in crypto, thinking that it's no longer a fringe story. It's here to stay. And now it's a matter of when the regulator finally decides, here are the policies. What is a broker? What's an exchange? How do you report it? All that stuff. I welcome that. I mean, I hope it happens sooner than later. But to me, I started at a 1%, then I went to 3, and now I'm on my way to 7. So I'm placing my bets,
Right.
and I'm going to make the assumption that we'll have this resolved in the next couple of years, including the ESG issue you talked about earlier. That has to get resolved too. There's a lot of stuff that has to get worked out, but it doesn't mean you stay away completely. You have to take the risk,
Right.
and the volatility. There's plenty of volatility in crypto. I mean, for obvious reasons, but
Right.
I'm very constructive. I'm very positive, and I'm just waiting until the regulator catches up with the market demand.
So do you think we'll see a Bitcoin ETF anytime soon?
No, not this year. Perhaps not even next year. On the other hand, lots of American investors have figured out how to buy the exchange and TSX up in Canada, and they hold their coin there in Canadian dollars. I mean, it's sort of, there's demand, and there's other ways to own the coin. And I have no problem with the regulator doing what they're doing. They just want to go in at their own pace. That's fine with me.
Right. But let's circle back to DeFi. We have Ethereum 2.0 obviously in the pipeline, and we just saw the massive London hard fork. Do you think that Ethereum 2.0 will sort of dampen the competition in the DeFi space because everyone is putting such huge hopes on it? And right now we can see that the market is rather fragmented. Before, like, for example, this time last year, no one had heard about anything other than DeFi on Ethereum, but now we have all these other chains like Binance Smart Chain, a lot of stuff happening on Solana, on Polygon, and so far. So how do you think the DeFi landscape will change if and when Ethereum 2.0 comes up? And of course, assuming they deliver on all the promises.
Yeah, I think it's obviously going to be extremely difficult for anyone to be able to displace Ethereum as it moves forward. I think there's, it's the vast majority of transactions in DeFi are happening there. But I do think when you look at how chains like Solana, for instance, are architected and the level of transaction volume and speed that they facilitate, I do think there is a good case for something like for an alternative to sort of take the lead in terms of the preferred platform for DeFi transactions. To me, remains to be seen, but I think there's definitely great competition, which I think is excellent. And I think one of the things we're seeing is more and more talent coming into the crypto space, and that's just really good for the industry as a whole. I think you sort of see these waves of talent come in during these bull markets, and a lot of it, of course, is centered around engineering talent. So I know we're seeing that a lot sort of over the last 6 months or so, which is a super important part of kind of moving these chains and platforms forward.
Okay, and I have one last question for both of you. First, Ben, what would your advice be for someone who is just starting out in the DeFi space and is trying to build something of value? Like, what would your advice be to a future DeFi builder, being one yourself?
Yeah, so I'll broaden it a little bit and just have a piece of advice to anyone wanting to build. I think really honing down on what that key problem is that you're trying to solve is essential, and really testing it across all different demographics. I think one of the big challenges for builders and for entrepreneurs in general is you have your circle of people sort of around you that, you know, in a lot of cases share a lot of the same values and you know, worldview and issues, and see the same opportunities that you do. So in my view, it's extremely important to get outside of that circle and really go to all kinds of different, you know, demographics and markets to really understand, like, is this a big enough problem, and are people looking at it the same way?
Okay. And Kevin, to you, I would like to ask you pretty much the same thing, but from an investor's perspective, to someone who is starting out with investing right now, but not specifically in crypto, because we see a lot of people who are getting into the crypto industry with this get-rich-quick mindset, thinking that I'll invest in Bitcoin now and I'll be a multi-millionaire in 2 weeks. What would your advice be to someone who's starting off with investing now and is also considering to put something in crypto?
Well, if you're investing in a business in crypto like DeFi, you have to really make sure that you've got a strategy for acquiring customers, because there's lots of competition, but you've got to have, you know, a really solid plan, particularly for social media, which becomes so important in the crypto community and the crypto industry. You've seen the integration with social media and equity stock prices. It's the same thing's going to happen in DeFi. And then in terms of investing in cryptocurrencies and tokens themselves, again, it'll be diversification. I mean, you know, there's obviously the cornerstone, big daddy of them all, Bitcoin and Ethereum, but you know, USDC or any stable coin tied to the US dollar is very interesting now, or stable coins tied to other currencies, interesting. I mein, because you can actually get yield off those things that you can't get from the fiat currency itself. And so that's of interest to me. But diversification, and I would say specifically no more than 20% in any one token or asset. So no more than 20% in Bitcoin, and then no more than no more than 5% in any one token if you're starting to get into very specific verticals, because there's a lot of volatility in individual tokens. I mean, you talked about some of these chains. You look at the variability pricing, it's all over the map. You just need diversification. That's what matters.
And you mentioned something very interesting, and I don't think a lot of people realize the power of compounding. And you're speaking about compounding really, you're speaking about it a lot just because it's so powerful. And I don't think a lot of people realize that you can easily have great yields on stable coins. And at some point, you might consider putting a lot of your wealth into something that you can compound over time instead of searching for...
I do that now with USDC, but the problem is it's complicated. That's why I'm invested in Ben and his team. I want something that's far less complicated, because it's one thing for me to have a staff that can actually deal with the regulator and deal with the platforms and deal with accounting and deal with reporting. I mean, that I have, but that's not the average person's way. If, you know, my daughter calls me up and says, look, I want to put $1,400, it's sitting in my bank account making nothing, making 20 basis points, and I'd like to do a strategy where I can write some contracts around a stable coin and maybe make 3%. That's not easy. And that's the whole mission behind what WonderFi is to democratize that process so that she and her, you know, compatriots can do that. And that's what I want to do. And I'll use the platform myself. I mean, it's sort of, crypto is not easy yet. Not easy from a compliance basis. It's not easy from an executional basis. And certainly DeFi is not easy. Not everybody knows how to open up a wallet online, you know, transfer ETH in, and all of that stuff is complicated, and it's a nightmare for the compliance department, a nightmare. Just to do 1099 reporting is a nightmare. So we're a long way from resolved here, and I think it's a huge opportunity. That's the way I look at it as an investor.
Okay, so then going back to WonderFi, Ben, can you tell us where is the project right now in terms of development, and what can we expect from you going forward?
Yeah, of course. But just to add on to one thing that Kevin was saying, because I think it's really important. So, you know, he's saying that, yeah, not everybody knows that process of opening a wallet, and really, you know, DeFi and crypto aren't simple from that user perspective. And I think it's a really important point, and it comes back to the market segments that we see. So again, this sort of early adopter market has a very different way of looking at things. It is, you know, people like you or I who want to dive in, understand get into the different wallets and really understand what's going on behind the scenes. And so I think as we move into the majority market segments, early majority, et cetera, the desire and need for that sort of goes away. There's still an education piece that and a trust factor that's really important there. But I think that that desire to sort of do those deep dives, it really just falls away. And so I think when you do, when you have some of those conversations with people in that market segment, that's definitely what we're seeing. So I just wanted to add that. But in terms of WonderFi, so the product really is focused around just making the most sort of dead simple trusted interface for people to access what the attractive parts are of DeFi and really the core functionality of DeFi. And so we've been doing beta testing for the last number of weeks, and really just kind of refining the user interface and process to make sure that it's not overwhelming users with information, and making sure that whatever's presented to them is useful in kind of their decision-making process as they go through the platform. I think one of the big issues that we saw with earlier builds of the platform, and then also competitor platforms, is they look really cool, but you don't really know what to do with all the information. It's quite overwhelming for our target user. So we're really spending a lot of time and energy kind of honing in that process so that it's dead simple for the user. And our team has been they built products that have been brought to market in the crypto space over the last 5 years, and then more kind of mainstream technology platforms like Hootsuite and Shopify and some of these platforms that have been used by millions of people. So you sort of stand to benefit from that experience as we look to bring this platform to the masses.
Okay. Well, I guess that's pretty much everything I wanted to ask you guys. Thank you so much for agreeing to this. I wish you all the best with WonderFi with all of your future endeavors. Just last words, can you tell us where we can find more information about yourselves and WonderFi as well?
Sure. So our website is wonder.fi. So you can go there to sign up for early access to the platform and for more information about the company and what we're up to.
Well, thank you so much to both of you once again.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.